Let's start with this tweet from Nick Fuentes. There is video, in fact. Nick Fuentes tweeted at 2:05 p.m. today. Last night, an armed killer made an attempt on my life at my home, which was recently doxed on this platform. The gunman carried a pistol, crossbow, and incendiary devices. I believe he intended to kill me. He is now dead. I am okay. According to the police, the would-be assassin committed a triple homicide in southern Illinois early yesterday before he arrived at my doorstep with his pistol drawn, calling my name. I am grateful to God that I am still alive. Tragically, the gunman broke into a neighbor's home to evade police and killed 2 of their dogs. While heartbreaking, it could have been so unimaginably worse. God have mercy. Doxing is not a game. This nihilistic lynch mob behavior must end before anyone else is killed. I will now have to uproot my life and relocate. While I can handle whatever comes to my front door, it is irresponsible to accept my neighbors with young families to share that burden. In the meantime, I will have to contract 24-hour security to protect myself and my property. If anybody would like to contribute to defray the cost, $13,000 a week, he ain't kidding, of private security and rebuilding my studio, here's a donation link. I can only accept cryptocurrency because I am banned from banking services and credit card processing. Thank you. Now, we have this story from NBC5 Chicago. They say far-right influencer claims home was among those targeted by homicide suspect. It's actually very nuts that this is how they're framing it. They say far-right influencer Nick Fuentes said he believes his Berwyn home was among those targeted by a man suspected in a triple homicide who was fatally shot by police late Wednesday night following a home invasion on Fuentes' block. Can you just look at that paragraph? So a guy who killed several people went to Nick's home with a weapon, calling out his name, then fled when the police arrived, broke into a house, killed 2 dogs, and was killed by police. They're saying only Fuentes believes. I just want to let NBC5 know there is no such thing as defaming the dead. You can just say what everyone is thinking. Now, there is actually a video of this posted by Nick where the man is on his doorstep with a crossbow and would appear, I don't know if it's a pistol. They're saying it's a pistol. It could be a bolt type weapon with, I don't know. You guys might know better than me. Fuentes says the killer parked his car in front of my house and approached my door with his pistol drawn and what appears to be a crossbow. I was live streaming at the time. He rings the doorbell, tries the knob, and yells, "Yo, Nick." This is terrifying. Look, I'm just going to say what everybody's thinking. There's a lot of people who don't like Nick Fuentes, okay? And I don't want to get into this purity test of who Nick Fuentes is and what his opinions are, because right now the issue is an individual who has opinions on the internet and trolls. Someone tried to kill him. This is not okay. It's never okay. And we need this to de-escalate. But my fear is that this would be the Mangonia effect. Yeah,
Nick's opinion doesn't matter here. It could be someone on the left and we would be acting the same way like we would be right now. As of course, it is awful and horrible what happened right now. And sadly, you know, the left did lose politically. And I've been warning about this, especially since Donald Trump won the presidential election. The left overwhelmingly doesn't have a lot of political solutions. They do overwhelmingly have a major mental health problem that predominantly a lot of people who believe in their larger ideology do suffer from. So this is something that I think has been in the works. I think the Mangonia effect is real. I think there's a reason he's being carried out like he's Bane. I think there's a reason there's a lot of epithets and there's so much lore around this particular story, as I believe there's a larger psyop happening here in order to gaslight, frame, and to build up this larger notion that if you can't solve your problems politically, you could just do it physically. And that right there is somewhere where we have to put the stop on it immediately, call it out. And I don't care if it's Nick, I don't care if it's Rachel Maddow, this is something that you don't do. And this is something that could desperately escalate the situation towards grand, dangerous proportions that we don't want to be living in.
Yeah, I was confused by some of the stuff you said connecting to like left-wing ideology, but I agree that regardless of who it is, regardless of how reprehensible I find Nick Fuentes, the solution is not violence. This is something I've articulated a lot in the wake of the assassination attempts against Trump to my audience, which is that if our principles, if our pro-democratic liberal principles include nonviolent solutions to these things, then obviously people trying to take violent solutions to disagreements is exactly against our principles.
But that is the left.
What's the left?
The use of violence.
How do you mean?
So, for instance, at like all direct actions, they have something called the diversity of tactics, which is a direct reference to individuals left aligned, covering their faces and engaging in violence. So the Mangonia effect. This is not a right-wing phenomenon. There's not like Bible-thumping conservatives going around calling for death and murder. There are people selling products who are outright of progressive or left ideology, advocating and celebrating and outright saying they want to engage in carnal relations with Luigi Mangione.
Yeah. So, and that's something I've been speaking out against among it's hard to say my own side because I think we talked about this last time I was on, or the episode's gonna come out tomorrow. It gets a little bit wacky if you just say you split the country into two sides, and then any most extreme example you can find across the two sides you portray as the entire side, right? But I agree, people celebrating Mangonia when obviously what he tried to do is not the solution to the very problem, separate from just the individual immorality of trying to murder somebody. Even the people saying that's okay because of healthcare problems seem to misunderstand how we would even solve those more systemic issues. But I did make the point a bunch of times last time, again on the episode that's coming out tomorrow. Sometimes we'll say in a general sense that regardless of political views, we all think violence would be wrong to solve those political views. But then it becomes a political point you're making, like, oh, liberals, Democrats, that cohort of people, regardless of where they stand on this issue, they're a part of this ideological problem. And last time I was on, we went over this, which is that political violence actually is far more common among right-wing ideologies.
I would take issue with saying Democrats, because I don't feel like your run-of-the-mill Democrats are the type of person that would be the type of people that Tim's referencing.
Well,
but you kind of make it like it's a left thing.
And even
I'm on your side here, man. Hold on, let me get through my point, man. I'm on your side.
Then you're both wrong.
That's not even true.
And you're both wrong.
There's wanted posters for CEOs in New York City. There's people selling out cards of all these CEOs that are on their target hit list.
Let's try something else.
You hear me though? That's wrong. It's wrong for people to do that.
When was the last time you saw a right-wing protest?
A right-wing protest?
Yeah, like right-wingers going out in the street
really
waving flags.
What I'm saying, but I'm saying that when it's actually more thoroughly analyzed systemically, right-wing ideologies are more responsible for political violence, which doesn't make the instances of left-wing political violence or promoting that.
Was that done by the FBI?
No. Let's just try and base it down.
Actually, independent groups as well. But
what would you define as like a right-wing ideology?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can things that ideologically across the political spectrum are associated with the right wing.
But what does that mean? Like you're saying, right-wing groups statistically are more likely to be violent. What does that mean?
No, whenever they study acts of violence that had a political motivation, it's more commonly by a pretty large margin people who associated with right-wing ideologies.
And what is a right-wing ideology?
Yeah, we could pull up the studies to specifically define it because I don't want to botch it. How would you define left-wing violence?
So in the United States, it's actually interesting because right-wing ideologies tend to just be disparate. So what does that really mean? Well, right can refer to anarcho-capitalists. Certainly don't agree with white supremacists, but in the media, in these studies you're referring to, they claim they're the same group.
But that's what I'm saying. Like if you have an anti-government from a right-wing perspective or super racist from a right-wing perspective, we're not going to say that's now we can categorize all of the right as that. I wouldn't do that.
But you can.
You'll do the same thing with the left, which is to say that a communist who wants to see a CEO killed is the same as someone who's just on the left.
It is.
Yes. Which is ridiculous.
And I can.
Because you're playing into the very. Because then.
Let me tell you why.
But if you make that argument.
Yeah.
I can tell you putting people in danger in the very way that we're speaking out against here. Because you're saying those people who want violence are an entire side now. As opposed to making distinguishments.
We'll simplify it very easily. If a group of white supremacists and white nationalists were out protesting, anarcho-capitalists would get into a fight with them. So these are two supposedly right-wing groups.
That's the argument? And there are left-wingers who get in fights with each other.
Actually, that's not true. On left-wing groups, as I've covered these protests for a decade, they have something called the diversity of tactics. So what you end up seeing, for instance...
You're talking about... Yeah.
Yeah, so you have liberals...
protesters, okay.
Then when you have liberals... So here's how it works, and here's why you need to... well, I mean, maybe you don't want to accept it. I don't care. When you get 300 run-of-the-mill liberals who don't believe in violence, black bloc extremists, these are not a specific ideology. It could be anarcho-left violent factions. It could be tankies. Specifically, utilize those protests for body mass. It's in their manifestos. It's in their meetings. And the liberal groups, when they're organizing, shout out to your friend Lisa Fithian, ask her about this. They tell the liberals, respect the diversity of tactics. Now, that is something that you don't see associated with right-wing groups because
you'll have like right-wing militias exploit right-wing protests for horrible ends.
When?
We can find particular examples. I don't have.
If you don't have them, then I don't think you have an argument.
Or like an example, would you say that? And I know someone over there is going to get triggered, but because it's such a prominent one that is on the top of my head, you had people who were peacefully protesting on January 6th, and then those who went violent. And I wouldn't say that every single person who's MAGA now are representative of...
That's not what I'm saying at all.
It sort of is.
It's
Because you didn't
literally
have
not.
you didn't have the peaceful people intervening to stop.
You did, actually.
Violent people. You didn't.
did.
You actually did.
Didn't in any meaningful
did.
way.
You're wrong.
Yes,
You're completely wrong.
Obviously, it was not a meaningful enough effort to even assist law enforcement.
There's surveillance footage showing some of the men asking police what they can do to help.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm saying that there are left-wing protesters as well
Yep.
who will be speaking out against violence at left-wing protests. I know because I've
And
seen
so
it
we
with my
can
own
we,
eyes.
we can talk about tendencies and right. And
Yeah,
so
well,
on the
no,
right,
but you're going to make anecdotal arguments about things you've covered or protest, and that's why I think last time too. It was
my
a
guy
lot of-
Taylor
it was- no, no, no,
Lorenz
let me
is
finish
not
the
a
point.
progressive.
It was
Like
a lot of-
she's a run of the
just
mill
let me-
progressive personality
point.
who said we all want more of that on TV.
Oh, she was wrong, and I spoke out against her.
So you are in the minority.
The
Maybe
vice president wanted more of it.
what?
Kamala Harris wanted more. What she said that people should be out in the streets. She said that she would.
She was not saying violently. You know that encouraging people to protest is different.
She was putting up.
I've heard
her
it wasn't about
bail
everyone
fund.
participating in
so
violence.
so you can't just
That wasn't about
that
people-
away.
That was just like how y'all. Again, you'll do the same thing for January 6th people and then say, but it's not for the violent ones. That was her argument.
The
as
vice
well.
president was not putting up a bail fund.
What? I'm saying that she was not doing that for people who would engage in violence.
She absolutely
getting arrested?
Wrong.
Who was getting arrested?
All sorts of trespassing or something like that.
No,
No.
I mean,
Property
no.
related things.
They're-
From
they're-
my
they're-
stance,
So the like for
But I-
instance, two people
yeah,
who
I got
who threw Molotov, who were giving out Molotov cocktails in New York, had their charges mostly reduced and nearly dropped.
so not dropped.
So so this is actually a really great quote from Kash Patel. If you are handing out Molotov cocktails, you're talking about federal terror charges, and they reduce them to like parole. Like that's shockingly insane.
And I would have, based on if we went through the individual prosecution, probably disagreements with some of those prosecutorial decisions. But I will say again, you'll go through, and this is really, to people's feelings, compelling to a lot of folks, and cite particular examples to portray a narrative about the entire other side being violent, right? But then we actually research it, and it's not true. Right-wing political violence, it is. It's
made
not,
up.
It's not. You can't
even name any.
I have
you can't
researched.
name an ideology and name an instance.
If someone would, you could just
You're going to pull up
a
the
study.
SPLC. You're going to pull up the
Just pull up a
FBI.
study.
You're going to
I'm
pull
talking
up
about studies.
extremely biased
You want-
I'll
studies
do a
that were
better
done by
job
biased
at
organizations
arguing
that
this
don't
thing.
give a
No,
damn
no,
about the
okay,
city.
hold on. The point is this. The point is this.
The reason
You cannot make an argument with
the-
no data.
No, the reason.
Tell me.
Pull up- I'm not the one who has access.
You
to
have a
the
computer right
data.
there.
Oh, I want your audience to see what I'm talking about.
Oh, for sure. Give me a source.
and
I'll pull it up.
All right, perfect. I think in the last, are we still logged in the last document I had? Here, one of y'all talk while I pull this up.
Should we pull up like the ADL's hate tracker map, or what do they have?
That's a credible organization that doesn't lie for political purposes at all, right? As well as the SPLC, as well as the FBI, that again fudges data in order to come to a particular political conclusion for political reasons. You can't believe a lot of these top institutions since they lie through their teeth.
Where can I send this?
They even lied about the statistics about
If you give
violent
me that, I
crime
can
in,
Google it,
in
whatever it
America.
is. Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.